Okay, so database is right. We're not messing around today. We are going deep. Deep dive into RoleCatcher's career guide, all about database administration.
Really is think of it like a cheat sheet.
Yeah, yeah.
For anybody who is even thinking about going into this field,
Yeah.
getting ready for an interview,
Yeah.
or just I don't know, insanely curious about what DBAs actually do.
And it's such a rapidly changing and evolving space.
Yeah.
Especially now with the explosion of data.
Yes.
The rise of AI. And RoleCatcher really does a good job at digging into those trends. I was really struck by just even how much they were talking about cloud migration.
Yeah.
It's not even just managing servers anymore. It's you have to understand AWS, Azure, all this stuff.
All of it.
It's a whole different ballgame.
It is it's a whole different world, and it's moving so fast. I mean, you think about even just 5-10 years ago, I mean, it was all on-prem, you were, in the basement, you were racking servers, you were now it's you don't even, a lot of, DBAs now have never even worked hands-on with a server.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about.
Well, and even just the ethical considerations now for DBAs.
Yes.
You are the stewards of some of the most valuable, secret information for businesses.
And you're responsible for it.
Yeah.
Legally responsible for it.
Yeah. RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from that either.
Yeah.
At all, especially with AI coming into play. So, what are some of those ethical considerations that you see DBAs facing these days?
Yeah, I think, take data privacy.
Right. You're talking about with AI now, you can analyze data.
Yeah.
In ways that we never could before, which is so powerful. But you also have to think about, consent, transparency, right?
Right.
Are we crossing any lines?
Right.
How do we make sure that we are using this data ethically?
Yeah.
And I think those are the conversations that we need to be having.
And then there's this whole automation piece of it too, because RoleCatcher talks about that. AI is changing the DBA landscape. It's automating tasks.
Yeah.
It's creating new opportunities, but it's also maybe making some more traditional roles obsolete.
I think I don't know if I see it as obsolete, but I get what you're saying. I think it's changing it for sure, right?
Yeah. And I think if you're able to adapt, I mean, that's what it's always been, right? But it's not like robots are taking over. It's just that you need to use AI to work smarter.
So for someone who's thinking about a career as a DBA, what skills should they be really honing in on?
I mean, I think, you've got to have your technical chops for sure, right?
Right.
But RoleCatcher talks a lot about, things like data analytics, being able to really work with the data, understanding cloud computing. I think those are the places where DBAs can add a ton of value.
It's almost like you need to be like a data detective now.
Yes, 100%.
Right. You need the technical skills.
Yes.
To keep things running, but then you need to actually analyze and be able to what are the insights here? 100%.
I mean, and I think to your point, the best DBAs that I know are curious.
Yeah.
Right. They want to solve problems.
Yeah.
And they get off a little bit on that.
And even the soft skills, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Being able to communicate, collaborate, solve problems.
Yes. And I think that's something that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Because, you're dealing with machines, you're dealing with data, but so much of this is working with people, right?
Right.
And being able to translate, technical jargon
right
to business stakeholders. I mean, that's a skill set in itself.
Yeah. And speaking of business, career paths, right?
Yeah.
So RoleCatcher talks about this typical trajectory. You start as a junior DBA.
Yeah. You work your way up to a principal DBA.
Yep.
But what surprised me was the emphasis on specialization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, it's not just about climbing the ladder anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's about figuring out what you're good at.
Right.
And really honing in on that niche.
So, how do you even figure out what to specialize in? The data world is so vast now.
It's so big and it changes so quickly.
Yeah.
Which I think is, exciting and terrifying at the same time.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah. I mean, you think about do you want to be a cloud database specialist?
Right.
Do you want to get into the weeds of, data security?
Yeah.
Do you want to be an AI integration engineer? There's so many different paths.
Yeah.
Well, and to their credit, RoleCatcher has some cool tools. They have, some AI-powered tools
Oh, yeah.
that I think can help with that. Like they have this thing called a career navigator
Yeah, I've seen that.
that like analyzes your skills, your interests, and it kind of spits out like, hey, here's some potential career paths that might be a good fit for you.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool tool because it kind of takes out some of the guesswork, right?
Yeah.
Like, you put in your information, it analyzes it, and then it says, hey, based on your skills and interests, it looks like these are some paths that you might want to consider.
And this is a good point to say too, like a career in database administration, it's not for everyone.
No, not at all.
Like this is demanding.
Yeah.
This is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity. So like, it's okay if this is not your path.
For sure.
Hmm.
But if you like digging into data, if you're someone who enjoys, solving those complex problems, if you like those aha moments,
Yeah.
then this could be a really, really good fit for you.
Yeah. And RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from the salary stats either. Like they basically say, if you're good at this,
You can make a lot of money.
you can make a lot of money.
A lot of money.
But it's not just about the money.
No, and I think that's the thing that I always try to emphasize to people who are, considering this field. Yes, the earning potential is there.
Yeah.
But the best DBAs I know, it's not about the money for them. It's about, solving those problems, making a difference, having that impact.
So we talked about the ethics. We talked about the evolving skill set, the career paths. Let's get into like the nitty gritty of what a DBA actually does.
Yeah, let's do it.
Like day to day.
Let's get into the weeds.
So RoleCatcher breaks it down into these 3 core areas.
Mm-hmm.
Implementation, administration, and security.
Right.
So let's start with implementation. What is that?
So think of implementation as like building the foundation, right? You're working with developers
Okay.
hand in hand to design and build these databases.
So it's not just like, oh, I know SQL, I can write a query.
No,
There's more to it.
much more to it.
Okay.
You have to think about, what are the business needs? How is this data going to be used? How can we make sure that this database can scale?
Okay, so you've built the database.
Yeah.
What's administration then?
So administration is like, that's where you're in the trenches, right?
Yeah.
You're making sure that the database is running. You're doing backups.
Yeah.
You're optimizing performance. You're troubleshooting issues. You're basically like the digital mechanic, right? Keeping that engine running.
Okay. And then there's security, which, that's huge.
That's, with all the data breaches.
Right.
And ransomware attacks.
Yeah.
That is paramount these days.
Yeah. And RoleCatcher, they say this too, like the demand for skilled DBAs is expected to skyrocket in the coming years.
Oh yeah, it's a candidates market right now. Like
Yes.
if you have those skills, if you have the experience,
Yeah.
companies are they're dying for people who know what they're doing.
But even with that demand, like landing a job as a DBA, it's not a walk in the park.
Right.
What are some of the challenges?
It's competitive.
Yeah.
Right. You're up against, some of the best and brightest minds, especially if you're, going for those top tier companies.
Right.
And it's not enough to just have the technical skills anymore, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to be able to sell yourself.
Okay.
You have to be able to articulate your value proposition. You have to be able to show that you're passionate, that you're not just in it for the paycheck, right?
Right.
That you actually care about data, you care about the role.
So that's where, like, RoleCatcher and their whole thing about their AI tools, that's where that comes into play.
Yeah, I think, they have those AI powered features that can really, I think, give candidates an edge.
So, like, how do those tools work? Like, walk me through it.
Yeah, so like their CV and resume builder, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about like, making it look pretty. It's about analyzing your skills
Okay.
and your experience and highlighting the things that are going to be most relevant
Interesting.
to potential employers. So it's like, having a secret weapon in your back pocket.
And they have that interview prep tool too, right?
Oh yeah. That thing is amazing.
So how does that work?
So it uses AI to analyze your responses,
Wow.
to practice questions,
Okay.
and gives you personalized feedback.
So it's like having a career coach.
It is like having a career coach, but it's also like having a tech whiz, like in your back pocket.
Yeah. And then their job matching feature.
Yeah.
And that thing is really cool too.
Yeah, I mean that's where I think they're really, really onto something, because it matches you with jobs that you might not even know exist
Right, right.
based on your skills and your interests and your goals.
So it takes out some of the legwork.
A lot of the legwork, a lot of the applications, like I don't know, it does it for you, which is really cool.
But you have to know what you want to a certain extent, or be open to it, right?
I think so, yeah. I think you have to have some idea, like, what are you passionate about? You know, what gets you up in the morning?
But even within that, like, okay, you like data, you like problem solving. There's so many different flavors of that.
1,000%, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where something like these tools, I think, can be really helpful.
For sure.
Because it can sort of help you narrow down.
Yeah.
Okay, here's some things to explore.
Totally, yeah. It's like having a personalized roadmap.
Right.
That's constantly being updated.
I like that. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the ethical considerations, the evolving skill set, the career paths.
Yeah.
Even how RoleCatcher can help you land your dream job.
Totally.
But before we move on, I want to touch on something that I think often gets overlooked in this, and that's the importance of continuous learning in this field.
Oh my gosh, it's huge.
Right.
I mean, if you're not learning, you're falling behind.
Yeah.
Like, it's that simple, especially in this field, because the technology changes so quickly.
Yeah, new stuff is coming out all the time.
All the time. Best practices are changing. The threats that we face are constantly evolving.
So how does a DBA stay ahead of the curve then?
I mean, it's a constant, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You got to be constantly, pursuing certifications.
Yeah.
Going to conferences, reading blogs, listening to podcasts, just like this one.
Right.
Experimenting with new technologies. You got to be a lifelong learner in this field. There's just no way around it.
Okay, so we've established that database administration is a constantly evolving field with plenty of room for specialization and growth. But let's get real for a second. What's the day-to-day life of a DBA really like?
It's, well, imagine being like a digital firefighter.
Okay.
But instead of flames, you're battling,
Data breaches.
Data breaches. Yeah.
Performance bottlenecks.
Right.
And that ever-present threat of just human error.
Right, because, technology is great, but also humans.
Humans are the worst. Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like, we create these systems.
Right.
And then we're also the ones who are most likely to, mess them up.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, it's a constant battle.
Okay, so RoleCatcher talks about DBAs needing to be masters of both proactive maintenance, right?
Right.
But then also reactive problem solving.
Yes.
So how do those two kind of play out in a typical week for you?
So I always tell people a good DBA is kind of like a ship captain, right?
Okay.
But they're also a skilled mechanic, so you need to be able to keep the ship running smoothly.
Which is that proactive maintenance, but then when,
something breaks.
When there's a leak, when the engine's sputtering.
You gotta fix it.
You gotta fix it. Yeah, that's the reactive problem solving.
Okay, so give me a concrete example of what's a proactive task versus a reactive task?
Sure. So a proactive task might be something like setting up automated backups and recovery procedures, right?
Right.
You're anticipating that, something could happen, you could have data loss.
Right.
And so you're putting measures in place to minimize the damage. Whereas a reactive task would be, let's say a server crashes, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly you're in firefighting mode.
Yeah.
You're trying to restore data. You're trying to get systems back online as quickly as possible.
Now I imagine those reactive situations can be pretty stressful, especially when you've got everyone breathing down your neck, when's going to be back up?
Oh, it's the worst, especially when it's a mission critical system.
Right.
And, every minute of downtime is costing the company, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow. Yeah, you've got a lot of pressure on your shoulders.
A lot of pressure. Yeah, you gotta have a strong,
strong stomach for it.
Strong stomach, yeah, for sure. Strong constitution.
Yeah, totally.
But that's where, experience comes in.
Right.
And that's where, having a good team and good processes in place can really make a difference.
You're not just freaking out, scrambling, oh my gosh, what do I do?
No, you gotta have a plan.
You've got a plan.
Yeah, and you gotta be able to stay calm under pressure.
Right.
Because, if you panic.
Everyone else panics.
And then it just spirals from there.
So you gotta be the steady hand at the wheel.
Exactly. You gotta be the rock.
RoleCatcher mentions that, communication is key in those moments too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like even if everything's going wrong, you still have to be able to communicate what's going on.
100%. I mean, even if you're in the middle of a crisis, you need to be keeping stakeholders informed.
Right.
Like, what's the situation? What steps are you taking to address it? And when can they expect things to be back to normal?
Yeah, because otherwise everyone's just like in the dark, freaking out.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's never a good situation.
No, communication is key.
Communication is key, for sure.
Speaking of which, I feel like this is a good segue to talk about C-level executives.
Yeah.
And like how RoleCatcher is highlighting this growing importance of data analytics.
Yes.
And how DBAs are really uniquely positioned to contribute to that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting trend that we're seeing.
What's your take on it?
Well, I think, DBAs have always been data experts, right?
Right.
But I think, for a long time, the focus was really on just keeping the lights on, making sure the databases were up and running.
Right, keeping things going.
Exactly. But now I think there's this shift happening where organizations are realizing that, data is not just this like byproduct of what we do. It's actually like a strategic asset.
It's valuable.
It's incredibly valuable. And so I think DBAs are being called upon more and more to kind of step up and help organizations make sense of all this data.
So it's not just about managing the data. It's about understanding it.
Yes.
Like, what does it all mean?
100%.
What's the story behind the numbers?
That's exactly it. Yeah. It's not just about the ones and zeros anymore. It's about, what are the insights that we can glean from this data?
Yeah.
How can we use those insights to improve our business, to make better decisions?
So do you think this shift towards data analytics, like changing the skills and qualifications that employers are looking for in DBAs?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, obviously, technical expertise is still paramount.
Right.
Right. Like you still have to know your SQL. You still have to understand how to manage a database. But I think now more than ever, employers are looking for DBAs who can also think critically.
Yeah. Like you said, connect the dots.
Connect the dots, see the big picture, and then communicate those findings to non-technical stakeholders.
So again, those soft skills.
Soft skills, crucial.
More important than ever.
Absolutely. And I think that trend is only going to continue as data becomes even more central to business decision-making.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. It's an exciting time to be in this field, that's for sure.
It really is. It's amazing how much it's changing and how much more important it's becoming.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about like the lifeblood of modern organizations.
Our data is king.
Data is king, absolutely.
Yeah. So for someone just starting out in their career, or even someone considering a career change into database administration, what are some of the key takeaways from RoleCatcher's guide?
Well, I think, first and foremost, be passionate about data. Like, you really have to love this stuff because it's constantly changing.
It's a 9-to-5 job.
No, it's not. You have to be constantly learning. You have to be constantly evolving your skill set.
And be curious.
Absolutely.
Because if you're not curious, you're not going to go digging for the answers,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you got to be a problem solver at heart.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to specialize.
Yes.
Find that niche.
Find your niche, absolutely, because, the field is becoming so broad now that it's almost impossible to be an expert in everything.
So find that thing that you're really passionate about.
Yes.
And then just go deep on it.
Go deep, become the go-to person for that, that particular technology, that particular skill set.
I imagine that's how you really stand out in the job market too.
100%. Yeah. I mean, if you can present yourself as a specialist in a particular area, that's going to make you much more attractive to potential employers.
And it's more fulfilling for you too, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, who wants to be a jack of all trades, master of none?
Right.
It's much more rewarding to be really good at something.
Yeah, be known for something.
Exactly.
Now, what about the importance of continuous learning? Mm-hmm. RoleCatcher emphasizes that throughout the guide.
Yeah, I mean, that's non-negotiable in this field. You have to be constantly learning.
So how do you do that?
Well, I think it starts with just having that mindset, right?
Okay.
You have to be open to learning new things, even if they're outside of your comfort zone.
Right.
You have to be willing to experiment, to make mistakes, to learn from your failures.
So it's more like a lifestyle than just a job.
100%. Yeah, it's like a lifelong journey.
Yeah, I like that.
And there are so many great resources available these days. You know, you've got online courses, you've got conferences, you've got meetups, you've got open source projects. There's no shortage of ways to learn and grow in this field.
And I imagine mentorship is a big part of that too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Finding someone who can kind of show you the ropes, give you guidance and support, that's invaluable.
And it goes both ways, right?
Yeah. It does, yeah. I mean, I've learned just as much from mentoring others as I have from being mentored myself.
It's like that saying, the best way to learn is to teach.
Exactly. Yeah, when you have to explain something to someone else.
Yeah.
It really forces you to think it through.
Yeah, and understand it at a deeper level.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful.
My pleasure.
I feel like we've covered so much ground.
We have, yeah.
But I still feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh, there's so much more to talk about.
There's so much more to explore in the world of database administration.
It's a deep rabbit hole.
It is a deep, deep rabbit hole.
Yeah, but it's a fun one.
It is a fun one if you're into that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, if you love data, if you love solving problems, if you love technology, this is the field for you.
It's amazing how the cloud has really leveled the playing field, right?
Yeah.
Like even small startups now can harness the power of big data.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible when you think about it. I mean, like a decade ago, that kind of stuff was like the exclusive domain of like Google and Facebook and, you know.
The big guys.
The big guys, right. But now, you know, with AWS, Azure, you know, you name it, it's like anyone with a credit card can like spin up a cluster and start crunching data.
It's powerful though, too, at the same time. But it does make you wonder, with all this talk about like automation and the cloud and everything, what does the future hold for us, like the human DBAs out there?
Right.
Is there even like room for us in this whole like brave new world of data?
I get asked that question a lot, and I have to say I'm more optimistic than ever about the future of DBAs.
Really? Why is that?
Because, yeah, like you said, automation is here, right?
Yeah.
Like it's happening, but it's not replacing us. It's freeing us up.
Okay.
To focus on the things that humans are really good at.
So it's not about being replaced by the robots. It's about evolving alongside them.
I like that. Yeah, it's a collaboration, not a competition.
Okay, so what does that collaboration look like in practice? Paint me a picture.
Okay, so let's say you're a DBA and you're working for a company that just launched this amazing new product, right? The product's a hit. It's generating tons of data, user data, performance data, all kinds of data, right? And your job, you're the DBA, you need to analyze that data. You need to figure out like what's working, what's not working. Are there any patterns, any red flags?
Right, like the typical stuff.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of spending like weeks, maybe even months, manually querying the data, writing scripts, creating reports, you can use AI.
Oh.
AI-powered tools to do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. These tools can like analyze the data in real time.
Wow.
They can identify patterns. They can find anomalies. They can even like generate visualizations, dashboards that like highlight the key insights.
So the AI is kind of like your like research assistant, like crunching the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Like think of it as like, you know, you've got this army of like data crunching robots working for you 24/7.
Okay.
But here's the crucial part. The AI can't like interpret the data for you. It can't tell you why a particular trend is emerging.
All right.
Or what the business implications of those trends might be.
Right. So you still need that human element.
100%. That's where you, the human DBA, come in, right? You take those insights that the AI has surfaced and you connect the dots.
Okay.
You see the bigger picture. You use your knowledge and experience to turn data into actionable insights. That's what makes a good DBA great.
So yeah, it's not about just like being a robot yourself. It's about, like you said, like connecting those dots, seeing the bigger picture.
Totally. And that's something that, at least with our current technology, AI it can't do as well as humans.
Well, and I always think back to that quote. I don't even know who said it, but it's like, data is not information. Information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not wisdom.
Ooh, I like that.
And it's like, we need that human element to like bridge those gaps.
Yeah. 100%, yeah. And I think that's what's so exciting about the future of this field is that, you know, it's not about like humans versus machines. It's about like, how can we use these tools to make ourselves smarter, to make better decisions, and to ultimately like, you know, make the world a better place with data.
Well said. So for someone considering a career in database administration, or even those who are already in the field, what's like the best way to like prepare for this AI powered future?
I think, you know, like we've been talking about this whole time, but that growth mindset is like paramount.
Yeah, don't be afraid to learn.
Don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid to experiment. And honestly, like, don't be afraid of AI.
Yeah.
Like, embrace it. It's a tool, right? It's a powerful tool that can make you even better at your job.
So don't fear the robots. Learn to work with them.
Exactly. And the other thing I would say is, like, focus on those uniquely human skills that AI can't replicate.
So, like, what does that look like? Give me some examples.
So we're talking about things like critical thinking.
Okay.
Problem solving, creativity, communication, empathy, all of those things that, like, make us human, right? Those are the things that are going to set us apart in an increasingly automated world.
Yeah, those are the things that the robots can't do. At least, not yet.
Not yet.
Who knows? Maybe one day. But for now, those are the things that we need to really focus on, like honing and developing.
100%, yeah. Like, don't just focus on becoming a technical expert. Focus on becoming, like, a well-rounded, individual who can think critically, solve problems creatively, and communicate effectively.
Those are the things that are going to make you invaluable in the years to come.
For sure.
Well, this has been an amazing, insightful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure. Always happy to talk Shaw.
And thank you to RoleCatcher for this incredible career guide. It's packed with, like, really useful, practical information. I highly recommend it to anyone, whether you're just starting out in your career, you're thinking about making a change, or you're already a seasoned DBA and you just want to, like, stay ahead of the curve. This guide's got something for everyone.
Couldn't agree more.
So, until next time, happy data diving, everyone.